Guess what? I have daddy issues. There, I said it. Now, before you click out of the video thinking that this is some sort of kink thing, although I completely understand why you think it might be, I just want to clear things up and let you know that it's not. So, if you're new to the channel and you're wondering why the hell I'm wearing a ski mask, check out my first video and I kind of go into the origin story a little bit there. Because yeah, apparently I have lore now. Honestly, after I posted my first video, I was like, you know what? Let's see what happens. And after 3 days, I got a whopping 3 views. Three. And I was like, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little discouraged. I was like, okay, maybe my content isn't resonating with some people. I don't know, maybe it's not, you know, enticing enough for people to watch. And I was like, okay, maybe this just isn't for me. Plus, work got ridiculously busy for me. I was pulling all-nighters, trying to meet quotas. So I put this channel a little bit on the back burner. But then, like a week after I posted my video, I just decided to check my channel on a whim. And I had like 500 viewers. Now I know that is not a lot comparatively to other YouTubers, but I mean, come on, for my first video, I feel like that was really good. Plus the comments on that video, oh my gosh, so kind, so encouraging, just mwah. So I thought, okay, maybe, just maybe there might be something more to explore here. So here I am, back with more videos, and trust me, I have a lot more planned, so stay tuned. Also, side note, when I checked the demographics for my first video, 100% of the 500 people who viewed it were male. I'm not really sure what to do with that statistic. Maybe they clicked it thinking that this was some sort of kink thing. But you know what? Whatever. I'm just gonna roll with it for now. As you can see from the title of this video, this is the story about how I found out my dad was cheating on my mom and how it shaped me into the person that I am today. Did anyone ask for this story? No. But I couldn't help but notice that there was not a lot of creators kind of admitting that they have daddy issues. Like I've seen videos of creators talking about how to overcome daddy issues, but no one straight up saying, yeah, I have them. And I know it's kind of a thing to make fun of women who have daddy issues.
Go slap, slap, grab, choke, shut up, bitch, sex.
But like, I want you to know there is a reason why we have them. And my hope for this video is that it kind of sheds some light on how they develop. More importantly, offer some support to anyone who's been feeling something similar. I just want you guys to know that you're not alone in this and find some solace in that. Okay, enough chit chat. Let's get to the video. So, for context, I'm an only child, and most of my family does not live in the country that I reside in, other than my paternal grandparents, but we don't speak to them very much, and that's a whole nother thing. But growing up, I was definitely a daddy's girl. Like, I would, go camping with him, golfing, watch sports together, you name it. So I became a little bit of a tomboy because of that. But once I hit high school, everything changed. Suddenly, all I wanted to do was fit in. Spoiler alert, I didn't. And I was dealing with puberty, a face full of acne, body image issues, and I was just trying to survive the hellscape that was high school. So naturally, I distanced myself from my parents, honestly, without even realizing it. So here's the thing about my dad, he's an insanely intelligent and creative person, but he always struggled with connecting to people. Like, he didn't have many friends, and he wasn't the best communicator. That meant that there was a lot of passive aggressive fights between him and my mom. And that's just not on my dad. Like, I'll admit my mom isn't the best communicator either. And while there was no physical fights or anything like that, there was a lot of tension at home. You could cut the tension with a knife, the passive aggressiveness through the roof. I felt like I was always walking on eggshells when I was at home. And then my dad became a bar guy. That was just became his thing. Like after work, he would always go to the bar and come home at like 2 in the morning most nights. And my mom was pretty understanding of that. She was pretty okay with him doing that because she knew that that was the only time or opportunity where he could make friends. He would come home super late. We just didn't think anything of it. Looking back now, obviously, that was a clear red flag that we didn't see at the time. Things also started getting a little weird. Like, my mom and my dad started not to sleep in the same bed together, and they wouldn't talk as much. At first, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to attribute this to one of their many, many fights, so I didn't really think much of it. But then this became our new normal, and the moment that everything changed happened. I found condoms in my dad's bedside table. All right, let's set the scene. I was 16, chatting with a girlfriend after school over the phone, as one does, and I was just walking around in my parents' room. And you know, when you're on the phone and you're just, well, I don't know, pulling drawers out, flipping through books, just doing random shit like that? Yeah, that's what I was doing. So when I was in my parents' room, I walked over to my dad's side of the bed and I just randomly opened his bedside table. And that's when I found the condoms. Okay, so let's break this down. Number one, my parents weren't sleeping in the same room anymore. Number two, they definitely weren't boinking anymore. And number three, even if they were boinking, why the fuck would you need condoms? You know? So after I had those initial thoughts, I remember my mind just went completely blank. And while I was still on the phone with my friend, I remember just slumping down, sitting on the ground, and just staring off into space, not knowing what to do. I did debate telling my mom, but honestly, I was kind of scared of what might happen afterwards. So instead, I did what any emotionally repressed teenager would do, and I shoved that memory deep, deep, deep down and pretended it never happened. Okay, so now after that happened, fast forward to senior year of high school. At this point, I moved on from Condom Gate and was just preparing for college. Life moves on. Although something did really strange happen during all of this, where I remember one night my mom went out with her friends and she came home like absolutely wrecked, which is really out of character for her. And I remember she was just yakking in the toilet, and my dad was at the bathroom door just staring at her. And I remember looking at him and I'm like, are you gonna help at all? But he didn't. He was just standing there like an NPC. So I went over and helped my mom out. And that situation never, like, I remember just feeling really weirded out by that situation. Like, what what was like, just it felt off. But again, I let it go. Okay, so high school's done, I graduated. Now we're going off to college, first year. I actually went to college about 3 hours away from where I live. And at the time, my dad actually opened a new business venture. So he wasn't home even more so at this point. Like, I never saw him at this point. I remember even prior to leaving for college, or while I left for college, my dad didn't even do me a send off. It was my mom who drove me to campus and helped unload my bags. And I remember just getting a call from my dad before I left, and he was like, "Okay, have fun." And I was like, "Okay, thanks." But whatever. I'm at college now. I'm having the time of my life, making new friends, drinking for the first time, partying. Like, I was just having a time. But then obviously Christmas came around, and that was my first opportunity to go back home. Once I'm home, I noticed that my dad's things are gone and there's not a lot of presence of him or at the house. So now I remember my mom sitting me down, and this was Christmas Eve, mind you. She was like, "I have something important to tell you." She sat me down on the kitchen table and she looked really nervous and she looked like she had to tell me something. And I just blurted out, "Dad's cheating on you, isn't he?" And she looked shocked and she was like, How did you know?" So then I told her about Condom Gate and how I had this gut feeling that something was off for a while now. And she confirmed it. She was like, "Yeah, I caught your father cheating, so that's why we're getting a divorce." And turns out the night she came home absolutely wrecked was the night that she found out my dad was cheating on her with, you guessed it, someone at the bar. Duh. So while most people were spending Christmas with their happy families, exchanging gifts, being grateful, my world was falling apart. And I was livid with my father. And the worst part is, he never reached out to me during that time. He kind of just disappeared. Like, once he knew, I knew that my parents were getting a divorce, and he knew that my mom told me the reason why they were getting a divorce. Yeah, he just didn't reach out. So, anyways, Christmas break ends. I go back to college and I spiraled. I fell into kind of a wrong crowd. I partied excessively, nearly flunked out. Like, it was like my only source of happiness was drowning myself in distractions. I mean, thankfully I pulled it together by senior year, but it was a really, really, really rough time. I mean, eventually during the year my dad did reach out, but we never really talked about the divorce or the cheating at all, for that matter. He just acted like nothing was wrong, and we just swept everything under the rug, and I played along with it because honestly, I just couldn't handle all the emotions that came with it. And we stayed in touch over the years, even after college. And my mom encouraged me to have a relationship with my dad. But let's be honest, the relationship was so strained at that point. I felt like I could never have my guard down when I was around him. And that honestly fucked me up a lot. Want to guess how this affected my relationships? Spoiler alert, disastrously. I became ridiculously anxiously attached. I would sabotage my relationships because I was always in fear that my partner would leave me, or I'd even date guys that were just completely wrong for me, and I just stuck around because I wanted that male validation. It wasn't until I actually met someone genuinely great, and he was essentially everything that I wanted in someone, where I, of course, self sabotaged and got super needy to the point where I realized, oh, I'm the problem. And then when he inevitably and rightfully so broke up with me, that was kind of my breaking point, where I was like, I need to get a hold of this. I can't live my life like this any longer. And so I did seek therapy. Through therapy, I came to understand just how profoundly my strained relationship with my dad affected me. And quite recently, I made the tough decision to cut him off entirely. I won't go into details, but the truth is, having him more in my life was causing more harm than good. And while I understand that there was likely other things that led to my parents' divorce aside from my dad cheating, but I think the real issue for me was his complete lack of effort afterwards. He never really showed interest in my life. He never apologized, and he also never truly showed up when it mattered. Like, he had years to make an effort and he simply didn't. Some might say, well, why don't you make the effort? Why don't you lead the relationship? And I've actually heard that from a lot of my family members on my dad's side, obviously. And to that, I'm like, no, he was the adult in all of this. I was the child when all of this began. It wasn't my responsibility to carry the emotional weight of that relationship. I was still figuring things out. I didn't know any better. And he was the one who should have stepped up, in my opinion. And now that I'm older, again, I can empathize more with the idea that our parents aren't the perfect human beings that we grew up to believe that they are. And, they're also living life for the first time and they do make mistakes. But it's still incredibly hard for me to forgive someone who never took the opportunity to show up for me, despite having ample time to do so. And also, I really don't appreciate when people say,
Well, he's still your dad, and blood is thicker than water.
first of all, the people who usually say that, at least in my experience, both of their parents are still together. So it's like, what are you even saying? And second, they haven't gone through the same situation as I have. So, no, I don't believe in that. In fact, I have friends who have actually been there for me, who have actually pulled me out of very dark times, who I consider more my family than some of the blood relatives that I do have. Yeah, so there's no neat, happy ending here, no Disney moment of reconciliation. I'm still working and dealing with my issues, still healing, and I'm also still single as hell. For context, I know the stereotype with women with daddy issues is typically they just sleep around and whatnot. I actually went the complete opposite way in that once I figured out that what my root cause was and how that was affecting my relationships, I absolutely abstained for dating for years. I'm not like not months, years, because it took me a long time to kind of rewire my brain into not defining every relationship as someone who's going to abandon me, reject me. And yeah, that took a lot of time, a lot of therapy. Again, I'm still going through it now. I do find that every single time I meet someone new or I start dating again, I do get re-triggered by those anxious attachment related emotions, which I don't like about myself. I'm gonna be honest with you. I feel like in my regular life, I would say I'm pretty real. Like I can hold my own. Like even so far to say, confident sometimes, not all the time. And like I have a good sense of self. But as soon as I get into a relationship, it's like all out the window. It's really strange for me because I don't identify with that being that person. So while I'm super cognizant of what I'm doing, it's still so hard for me to actually make those changes and have those changes be more solidified in order for me to be a secure person. I hope that makes sense. But anyways, that's what I was trying to say. Not all women with daddy issues sleep around. So there you go. I'm also sharing this video to remind anyone who's gone through something similar that you're definitely not alone. Again, I'm still going through these issues. I'm still navigating it day to day. And if you've ever gone through something similar, I would love to hear about it in the comments. If you've ever gone through something similar, what did you do to cope? Maybe some different perspectives that you have. Or if this video even resonated with you, honestly, I'm just curious. And to any parents watching, I do want to leave you with one parting note, which is if you've ever made mistakes like my dad did, my advice would be to just talk to your kids, set your own ego aside, own up to your mistake, be there for them. It really does make a difference, I promise.